Hello! If you sailed on the Mayflower in 1620 by Ann McGovern, illustrated by Anna DiVito, would you live in a log cabin? No, the Pilgrims had never even seen a log cabin. The houses they built in Plymouth were the same kind of houses they had lived in back in England. But the houses in Plymouth were much smaller. They had steep roofs covered with a kind of straw called thatch. There was no glass in Plymouth. The windows were made of paper or cloth. The paper or cloth was rubbed with fat to let some light in. The first houses had only one big room with a room upstairs called a loft. Some people slept in the loft. Where would you sleep? You would have to sleep on the Mayflower until your house in Plymouth was finished. Some people lived on the Mayflower until the end of March, almost 4 months after the Pilgrims landed in Plymouth. When your house was finished, you would sleep on the floor until you had time to make a mattress. You would sleep on the mattress until you had time to make a bed. Beds for grown-ups were made first. Grown-ups put their mattresses on top of rope springs. You were lucky if you were one of the few Pilgrims who had a feather bed. Feather beds were linen bags filled with soft goose feathers. In the summertime, you could sleep on top of it. It made a soft mattress. In the wintertime, you could sleep under it. It made a warm blanket. Small children slept in a bed called a trundle bed. The trundle bed was kept under the grown-ups' big bed during the day. At night, it was pulled out. Babies slept in cradles. Children 7 years old or older slept upstairs in the loft. What kind of furniture did the Pilgrims have? The first houses did not have much furniture. There was not much room for furniture, and there was not much time to make it. For a table, the Pilgrims put wooden boards across 2 wooden sawhorses. At night, they put the boards against the wall so that they would have room to put their mattresses on the floor. Not every house had a real chair. When there was a chair, the man of the house used it. Everyone else had to sit on a bench or on the floor or stand up. A big fireplace took up one side of the room. It was used for cooking, for light, and for heat in the wintertime. Some people brought rugs from England. They used them to cover their beds. They never put them on the floor. You would hang your everyday clothes on pegs on the wall. Guns and helmets were hung on pegs too. Your Sunday clothes would be kept in a pine chest along with the sheets and blankets. What kind of table manners were the children taught? Children ate standing up at the table all through the meal. It was good manners to keep your hat on while you ate. You could not say a word at the table unless a grown-up spoke to you first. It was good manners to eat with your fingers. There were no forks in Plymouth and only a few wooden spoons. Clam shells were often used as spoons. You would use the same knife to cut meat that you used to cut wood. In some homes, the cooking pot was put right on the table. Into the pot would go your clamshell or your fingers to take out your food. Your plate would probably be a piece of wood called a trencher. One side was flat, the other side was scooped out so it could hold soup. You would share your trencher with a brother or sister. At the end of the meal, a basket called a voider was passed around. You would throw crumbs, bones, and napkins into the voider. You might use as many as 3 linen napkins at one meal. Eating with fingers was messy. After dinner, the men and women smoked their pipes. What did the Pilgrims wear? Do you think that Pilgrim men always wore black clothes and tall, stiff black hats? Do you think that Pilgrim women always wore long gray dresses with white collars? Well, they didn't. Those were just their Sunday clothes. The Pilgrims wore brightly colored clothes for every day. Women wore long woolen dresses of red, green, or blue. They wore white linen caps that came down over their ears. Girls dressed just like their mothers. Pilgrim men and boys wore long-sleeved blue or green shirts. They wore woolen or leather jackets called doublets and pants called breeches. They wore red or green woolen stockings and knitted stocking caps. Little boys wore long dresses until they were 6 years old. After that, they dressed like the men. On cold days, the Pilgrims wore red or purple capes. Women and girls wore capes with hoods. In the summer, children and many grown-ups went barefoot. The only clothes the Pilgrims wore that first year were the clothes they brought with them on the Mayflower. Were there special jobs for boys and girls? Yes, boys watched the cornfields. 1 or 2 boys sat on the corn watching stand. They took along a pile of stones to throw at any bird or dog or wolf who might get into the cornfield. Boys took turns watching the field until the corn began to grow. Boys and girls both shelled corn. The kernels of corn were scraped off the cob along the edge of a shovel or against the long handle of a pan. Cooking a turkey was an all-day job for a boy or a girl. An iron rod called a spit went all the way through the turkey. The handle of the spit had to be turned until the turkey was cooked on all sides. It was hot work, and it took from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. Another job was mattress making. Boys and girls put pine needles or corn husks or feathers into linen bags. Boys and girls gathered special grasses to make thatch for the roofs of the houses. They had to walk miles to the banks of the creek where these grasses grew. They picked mussels from the rocks in the water. They dug for clams in the mud. Boys helped build homes. They helped hunt for food. They made wooden pegs that were used instead of nails. Girls helped cook and serve the meals. They helped with the washing. Boys and girls were as busy as the grown-ups. There wasn't much time for fun. Goodbye.